Welcome to Best Listener Ever. Today is May 18th, 2022. The time is 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to like, please remember to share, please remember to subscribe, clicking on the notification bell. The title is plain: Why Racism Won't Die. This is part 1 of 3. But I have to begin with something of to identify myself. I am a 68-year-old black man coming to you live from deep in the heart of the state of Texas, the Gotham City of the South. I have to begin with a joke of a sort. Two young fish are swimming along when they encounter an older fish swimming their way. As the older fish passes, he remarks to the two younger fish, "How are you enjoying the water today, boys?" The fish look at him, and as they pass each other, one young fish looks at the other and says, "What water?" Now, that's just to indicate that racism is so pervasive, as is fish in water, that they don't really know they're in water. We've already talked about how pervasive racism is in the United States of America. And without racism, the United States of America would not exist. Racism is bonded into each and every fiber of being American, whether you're white, black, or anyone else. No race has a monopoly on racism. Some races have racism within their groups, i.e., black people. I didn't come here to debate that. I'm here to tell you why racism won't die. It's because we won't let it. White people won't let it. Black people won't let it. No one who's imbued with racism will let racism die. Every time racism collapses of a heart attack, someone rushes over and renders CPR. Every time racism even looks like it's about to pass out, someone calls EMS. Racism is rushed to the hospital, put on life support until it's given a clean bill of health and released back into society. We are born in racism, we are bred in racism, and we will die in the same racism. And it's the same racism all across the board. Historically speaking, in my own family, my mother's father, we call him Big Daddy, did not like white people. And he made no secret of it. He didn't go on and on about it. But when he referred to white people, he didn't say white people. He used a pejorative term that did not start with an H. I think that came from Hollywood or the East Coast. But here in the South, that's not the pejorative word for white people. I'm not going to say what it is because we don't use pejorative words here. But the way he said it lets you know that white people were not his cup of tea. Let me just put it like that. He was raised in Cameron, Texas, and I believe that probably had something to do with his attitude. Now, in Big Daddy's house, no one was allowed to use the N-word either, except him. And he always prefaced the N-word with the word lazy. He could go on and on about lazy N-words, but no one could use the N-word. Now, my grandmother never worked outside the home. Never, ever worked outside the home. She was always a homemaker, took care of the children. That's because my grandfather did not want my grandmother working outside the home, because in them days, the 20s and 30s, there was very little work for black women except in white people's homes. And Big Daddy wasn't having that. But after he passed away, my grandmother, to keep busy, volunteered at a community center up the street from where she lived. And for a while, she just took part in the activities among the elders. She made pottery, some of it I have here, and other activities that the elders participated in. And she subsequently was asked to help in the daycare center. And she volunteered and worked in the daycare center with infants of all races, creeds, and colors. And she told me one day, because I was asking her about her day, what she was doing at the center. And she said, Ricky, which was her name for me. My closest relatives called me by that nickname, Ricky. I always thought that white babies were just the nastiest little things. And I said, well, okay, what's next? And she said, but you know what, Ricky? I found out after working with them, they're just like our babies. Well, needless to say, you could have bought me for a nickel. Every time I think about that story, you could buy me for a nickel. She had to wait until she was in her 70s to come to the realization that babies are just babies. I don't think my grandfather ever had that realization. So what happens, what I'm trying to point out is we maintain this racism in our own families. When Black people talk about having the talk with their children to prepare them for entering the world, that perpetuates racism. It either ingrains a fear of white society or an apprehension about white society or an aggressive attitude toward white society. I don't know what white people teach their children, but to bring it back to Texas, and many of you have probably heard this story by now, of the little boy. I don't even know where it was in Texas. It really doesn't matter. Texas is Texas. The little boy who went to a neighbor's door with I guess it was a whip of some sort. That's the way the stories describe it, a whip. And he was lashing the door, calling out for the Black family's 9-year-old girl to come out. But why he was lashing that whip against the door, we don't know. What he was going to do with the whip, we don't know. But the parents told him to go away. 9 years old. The father, the Black father, went to the white family's house and asked about the incident. And the father came to the door with a pistol behind his back. And I guess he was so nervous, the gun went off. And he had one of his children right behind him. He had the gun behind his back, and the gun went off, a .357 Magnum. He could have shot his own child. God only knows what he was going to do with the gun right here in Texas. The whip is symbolic in this story because Texas was known for its harsh slavery, which became known as bullwhip slavery for good reason. Slaveholders in the Southeast, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, threatened their slaves with selling them down the river, the Mississippi, to Louisiana, from where they would be sold into slavery in Texas. And once a slave was sold into slavery in Texas, that was the last you saw of him. You had three options. You could run north to the Red River and go into Indian Territory, which was also a slave's territory. You could flee south to Mexico, where there was no slavery, or you could flee east to the west into Indian Territory. So there really weren't many choices for runaway slaves in Texas, and slavery was harsh. This is where my people were under the cruel rod of slavery. So, long story short, slavery is perpetuated by you and me. I've had to have the talk with my daughters. Well, one of them anyway. I didn't raise my older daughter. She was raised in the Houston area. But I've never taught any of my children or grandchildren to be apprehensive or fearful of white people. Needless to say, to hate white people. Take everybody for themselves, but trust no one. Not white, not Black, not anybody. Trust no one. Now, if you want to call that racist, fine. But I have never based her lack of trust on color, because Black snakes will bite you just like white snakes will. Now I'm going to bring this short dissertation to a close. I would like to ask you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, clicking on the notification button. Now we'll be back live at, I believe it's 6 p.m. this evening, Central Standard Time, for the second installment in this three-part Why Racism Won't Die. I hope you can join me then. I hope someone will want to click on the link to take part in the conversation. But until that time, I ask you not to let anybody make a monkey out of you. Don't make a monkey out of yourself. Now, this monkeypox thing they got going around, they say is sexually transmitted. I don't get into your sexual life. If you come up with the monkeypox, you've got nobody to blame but yourself and whoever you caught it from. In the meantime, take care. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And peace.